Hello and welcome back to another episode of Transport Fever 2. In this video, we'll be starting out here at our passenger train station, and we will be heading all the way over to our city of Montgomery, all the way out here. Now, this is the line I want to set up since Montgomery is one of the farthest cities on this map from Jackson and Scottsdale, so I want to get this line set up pretty much right away, as it's probably our next easiest line to make, as all the cities over here require us to cross this huge bay in some way that I'm not too sure we have the money for those bridges or the amount of terrain work it would take. And Birmingham, I'm still not sure how we're going to get up this giant hill to get into that city. And of course, all the way over here in Mesa, we still don't have the money to afford the bridge that it would cost to cross this river this high up. So Montgomery is going to be our goal for the day, and hopefully somehow we can figure out how we're going to come through all of this rough terrain and connect up in Scottsdale and Jackson. So first, let's get a train station set up in Montgomery, and I think we'll probably set this up as a terminus station, and I think we'll end up facing it sort of this direction. So let's get 2 tracks, 240 meters. We'll have to do a lot of flattening of the terrain near the end of the station there, but placing this down right about like that should work out pretty well. We will connect up a road, which doesn't seem like we can get one coming off of that intersection, so let's just build our own road connection really quick. Alright, so here we are with our road connecting to our train station. So now let's get some of this terrain flattened out and smoothed so we can begin laying some track. So first, let's just come in here with our flatten brush and select somewhere about where the train station sits, and we'll just extend this all the way across until we cover this sort of dip in the terrain, and then we'll just smooth out the edges so it's a lot more natural, and I think that already looks a ton better. Now we have our station facing this way so that we can have firstly our line that comes out, slowly work down the mountain towards Jackson and Scottsdale, but then I think farther in the future we might also have a line that comes from Montgomery, curves around here, and then hooks up into Mesa at some point. So having it at this angle allows us to go in both directions eventually, and in this video we'll just be focusing on getting to Scottsdale and Jackson. So I think it's probably easiest to start over on this side and work our way over to Montgomery. So somewhere over here I'm thinking we can branch off a line, and we'll want to make sure that we keep it at as high of speed as possible, especially since this line will be going uphill most of the time. We'll need to keep our speed for basically as long as we can while we slowly work up the mountain. So we're gonna have to avoid this little crater, so we'll just sort of follow the outside edge of that. And of course when we come back through here we'll smooth out the terrain next to all these tracks, but with the amount of elevation change we have to do, I don't think there's much room to really focus on conforming with the terrain. I think we pretty much really need to focus on gaining elevation before anything else. So then we'll continue to come over here and cross the road. And then as soon as we're across there, we're going to start working up. And this is where it's going to get tricky because the way we started this sort of points us in the wrong direction. So we'll either have to have a bridge here or maybe do something with the terrain, which might not be terrible. So if we do this and just turn it into earth, I'm hoping doing this won't mess with our terrain tools when we come back through and smooth it out and make this all the same, or at least make it look natural. So we can have that a nice gentle slope up, and then continuing this on. Again, trying to avoid bridges wherever possible. So we'll do that. And then pretty much the last thing I think we need to do really is have a tunnel through here. I think it's pretty unavoidable without going completely around and through this valley and then back down into Montgomery, which even that would be hard to do considering the slope. So I think a tunnel's fairly reasonable in this location. I would like to get the slope down as much as possible, but there might not really be much we can do about that. We can see here if we just straight up connect it to the station, we're underground for a very long time, which I don't mind too much, but I think realistically we'd want to get above ground as soon as possible. And so I think if we're able to pop up somewhere over here, that would make the most sense. So then all that's left to do is just grab this and hopefully just connect it straight up, although this road doesn't like it too much, so we'll just delete that road. We can always just rebuild it to make it conform to how we want. And we don't necessarily want a tunnel there, so we'll just cut through the land. And I think that's good for this track. So now let's get this second track running along here. So we'll just quickly drag this along our existing path. And it shouldn't cost too much to just add this in here. It might get a little costly around the tunnels and some of these spots with all the extra landscaping, but now we should be able to just drag this over here and connect up to our existing network. So I think what we might actually do in this area is, instead of connecting to these tracks that already have our trains running on, we accidentally deleted some track that we need, so let's just replace that quick, and then we can let the game run again. I think I want this line to follow next to it and slot into these other platforms that we have. So let's just simply grab this, and if we can get it to snap next to our existing line, although we might have to pull this back even more to get a smooth curve. So we can then drag this out. Speed limits doesn't look too good there. This looks good as we're up at 75 miles an hour the whole way. So we can come in, follow along these tracks, although I'm not sure why it doesn't snap after a certain point. Maybe it's the terrain, so let's try flattening this out. Alright, so now we have this connected up to these two platforms. Let's get our crossing sections in. So we'll add those in there, and then all the way over in Montgomery, we'll add some in right about here. So there we go. we have those all in. And now what we can do is add our signals, which will space out pretty generously across this whole line. And then now that we have our signals placed, I think first let's get a train running and get our infrastructure set up, and then we'll focus on making the land look good surrounding the track. So first, up here at Montgomery, we'll need a bus stop. So we'll plop down a bus stop right in front of the train station, and then we'll grab our existing bus network and manage the line. So after this Pine Street station, it'll come into the train station where it can then continue the loop around the city. And I think while we're here, we can replace some of these buses with maybe some of these more powerful ones, since I do worry about the slopes of these roads. And then we'll just copy some over, since we'll be probably bringing in large amounts of people to and from Montgomery. And then what we can do is, I think we'll build our train depot over here next to our Montgomery station. So we'll get this to fit right next to here, sort of right at the end of the platform. And let's try to raise this up just a tiny bit to there. And then all we have to do is bring this in and connect it up to this track. Alright, so now we have our train depot connection. We can now get a train running on here, although maybe we might need two, considering how long this track is. Alright, so I think this is the train that we're going to be running on this line. It's an A35 with 3 of these 6-axle passenger cars on it. So this train has a top speed of 62 miles an hour and a capacity of 60. And really our main limiting factor is our power and top speed on different slopes. So the whole middle portion of this track probably falls in closer towards the medium slope. So we can see there, for medium slopes, it would take about 5 minutes to get up to top speed. Now, the portions at each ends of the stations are pretty flat, which gives it probably enough time to get close to top speed. But the thing we don't want is to be losing a bunch of speed when we start getting closer. So you can see if I add another car, that drops down to a maximum of 56 miles an hour on a medium slope, which isn't terrible if it was just a little bump in the track, but considering it's the whole middle section, I think that much speed over that long of a distance would start to add up. So I think just having 3 cars on the end of this train should do just fine. So we'll go with 2 of those, and we will have those run from all the way over here in Jackson and Scottsdale, all the way up to Montgomery. So now let's give these trains some time to spread out on their tracks, and then once they're set up and done, we can start to make the track look good, even out the terrain in some areas, and start detailing our Montgomery station over here. So we can see here our train gets very close to its top speed throughout sort of the early stages of this incline, so that might change once it's fully loaded. Not too sure about that, we'll have to check in on that, but I think this train will run just fine for the most part, since it does run up and around 60 miles an hour for the larger portion of the trip from Jackson and Scottsdale to Montgomery. Alright, so now that we have our trains running, let's get in and smooth out some of the terrain we have along our tracks so it looks a lot more natural and a lot better than what it is just with the natural cutting. So here, let's flatten out a little bit of the area right next to the track. We grab this and just sort of follow along the edge. So we can do something like this for this area, and it gives the train and the tracks a lot more room to breathe when it comes into these little areas. You can smooth out sections like that. And then I think for this tunnel section, I am just going to raise up a little portion and just sort of spread this around so that it looks like there's good reason for having the tunnel there, since before the land was really right at the top of the tunnel entrance, but now if we do something more like this, we can see it definitely looks like it's going more into a larger mound or a mountain than just a small hill. So we'll leave sort of this open cliff face on this side. We can maybe slope it up a bit there, so that adds a little bit of visual interest to the tunnel entrance. And I think we'll leave this area as it is. And then coming down to this one, we'll do something a little bit similar, although I do really like how this one already sits. We just might extend the elevation change even farther along the edge here. So we'll bring this and flatten all the way out till we start cutting into that cliff face. We'll smooth out this and some of that. So then I think getting something closer to this looks much better. We'll just give it a quick click to smooth out some of the harder edges we had. And then we get to probably one of the more challenging portions of this, which is all of this and then heading up into the tunnel. So we're gonna have to raise a lot of land to get this to look right. And so I think using the flatten tool and pretty much maxing out the strength and increasing the brush size a little bit should help just sort of gradually filling in this whole area. So just slowly, every now and then clicking so we match the elevation of the tracks and pulling it out. I think that'll help this look a lot more natural. So now that we've done that, let's start to smooth it all out. So before, everything on this side of the tracks was sort of a big dip, and now coming through here and smoothing it out, it's a lot more of a flatter area. And maybe we even want to pull some higher terrain out towards this way. So we'll just sort of do something like that, and then when we smooth it out, we should get some more natural bumps and cliffs that come out of this. So now this area of the track looks much better with some interesting landscaping going on, and so we just have to extend that over this way now as we continue to smooth. And let's just see what this looks like if we just smooth along this track first. It's very obviously probably not going to look too great at first, and I think really we need to delete a lot of these trees so we can actually see what's going on. We'll replace all of these once we figure out what we want our landscape to look like, but pretty much we just need to sort of fill in this gap. So grabbing our flatten tool and just basically doing this, and then coming through and smoothing. Hopefully we'll get something that looks pretty good, but doesn't look terrible. Maybe we'll flatten it out a little bit in some area, so we can do that and then smooth it out. And then maybe we keep some aspects of what this hill used to be. So we'll do that, sort of smooth it out so it looks a little bit more gradual. We have a little dip over here. And then I'm sort of okay keeping this side as the sort of stone cliff face. Let's see, we can get this to be a little bit sharper, which I don't mind too much. And then we'll just smooth out where we had that flattened area. And I think we'll just fill this back in with trees. So we'll grab our trees. Maybe we'll add in some bushes. And we should be good to pretty much paint these back in. So now I think something much more like this looks pretty good. We just have to clean up a few sections, like some of these bushes that are just on the cliff face, and some other things, and then we'll be good to clean up the Montgomery station. Alright, so here we are with what this whole area looks like now. I think with the forest growing in, it looks pretty good. And then we sort of come out into this area, and then into the tunnel. And I think that was all we really needed to do for landscaping. Maybe just a quick pass with the smooth tool over some of these areas so we get rid of those harder terrain edges, but I think other than that, we're pretty good with that part. So now over here in Montgomery, there's not really much I wanted to do. I think maybe turning this into something of a parking lot might be interesting. So again, coming in with our flatten tool and just flattening this all out to the height of this road, which I believe it pretty much is already. So yeah, we can leave that. Alright, so I think we'll leave it at this little parking lot here. Adds a little bit of detail, but there's not really much we can do with this space anyway. So I think a nice small parking lot here, and then maybe if the city becomes larger or we need to expand this station, we could fill in this side or this side a little bit more to help it feel a lot bigger. So now let's just check in on these lines and see how they're doing. Looks like we have over a full load of passengers waiting here, and if we click this train, it looks like it is bringing in almost a full load of people from Jackson and Scottsdale. So with that, looking at our finances, this line seems to be doing very well for us, making well over $1 million pretty much every time it goes back and forth. So well worth the cost that we put into all of this. We're still about 500 or 50 million below what we started with in this video, but this was a very costly project, but very much needed for the infrastructure that it provides, as I'm sure demand down here will continue to build as these cities grow and the whole map becomes more interconnected. So with that, I think that's really all we're going to do in this video. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or feedback, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.